You're watching the MMA Oracles Podcast, and now, presenting your host, Jack Moon.
This podcast is coming to you late in the week. I am your host, Jack Moon, for the MMA Oracles Podcast here, and we're going to be covering UFC Fight Night 240. So I'm just going to get through these as quickly as possible. First fight of the night is Nora Wonder Cornole versus Melissa No Mess Mullins. Cornole is 34 years old. She's 7-1 overall, 5 knockouts, 1 submission, 1 decision. She is currently 1-0 in the UFC. She went 3-0 in UAE Warriors. Her best win has been her UFC victory over Jocelyn Edwards. On the other side, Mullins is 32. She is 6-0 undefeated with 3 knockouts and 3 decisions. She's currently 1-0 in the UFC as well. Her best wins have been over Daria Zalesniakova and Irina Alexieva. Mullins is coming into this as a minus 330 favorite, with Cornole coming back as a plus 260 underdog. There's currently 1,211 Tapology votes on it, with 84% favoring Mullins. 87% of those are taking her to win by decision. Of the 16% taking Cornole, it looks like 72% are taking her to win by decision as well. I do see this being closer than the odds suggest. Both fighters are decent, but I do expect this fight to go to decision, as it seems like the fans on Tapology do as well. Mullins is the more active fighter. She throws more volume. She's more accurate with her shots. She's got the slight reach advantage. In a boring fight that's going to decision, that's probably enough to get her the nod. So for the official pick, give me Melissa No Mess Mullins by unanimous decision. For the second fight on the night, we have a matchup between Dylan the Mindless Hulk Budka versus Cesar Cezinha Almeida. Budka's 24 years old. He is 7-2 overall with 1 knockout, 2 submissions, and 4 decisions. He is 3-1 in LFA, and he went 1-0 on the Contender Series. Best win has been that Contender Series win over Chad Hankum, who just looked god-awful. And Budka also looked pretty terrible. Just deemed by Dana White as one of the worst fights in Contender Series history. Somehow he still got a contract. He is taking on Almeida, who is 36 years old. He is 4-0, undefeated, with 3 knockouts and 1 decision. He's only knocked out fighters with losing records or no wins at all. He did go 57-8 as a kickboxer with 27 knockouts. Budka's coming in as a minus 165 favorite, shockingly, with Almeida coming back as a plus 140 underdog. It's currently 1,122 Tapology votes on the fight. 70% of those are favoring Almeida, with 71% taking him to win by knockout. Of the 30% taking the favorite Budka, looks like 75% are taking him to win by decision. Both of these fighters suck. Let's just get that out of the way early. Budka's worse, in my opinion. Can't really believe he is a favorite. In my review of him after the Contender Series Season 7, I did state that I didn't expect him to win a single UFC fight, and I still don't. On his Contender Series fight, he failed to listen to his corner. They were telling him to throw his right hand. He just kept wrestling instead. Once he did get the fight to the floor against a fighter who just couldn't stop a takedown to save his life, he was pretty incompetent in top control. Didn't know what to do, didn't know how to do any damage, didn't know how to proceed to finish the fight at all, didn't know how to get himself into a better position, just really controlled the fight from top control. Obviously, the other guy looked even worse because he couldn't stop it. Did catch him in a guillotine at one point that Budka also didn't know how to defend. He was lucky to get out of that. And he was just lucky overall that his opponent looked even worse than he did. I believe Dana said that it was the worst Contender Series fight ever, and I agree. Still don't know why he got a contract. He is only 24, so technically he does have more potential than his opponent here, but he has a pretty shitty team behind him as well. They've only produced fighters that are not good. The only fighter he ever knocked out, his lone knockout finish, was 2-10 overall, and never fought in pro MMA again afterwards. But he does likely have the edge on the ground, and his wrestling probably gives him the edge there as well. But Almeida is the better striker here. But he's also not a knockout artist. I mean, this guy finished less than half of his kickboxing wins. When he faced a decent MMA fighter on the Contender Series, he had to go to decision. But that lone Contender Series win is still a better win than any of Budka's. So unless Budka comes in and looks way better than he did on the Contender Series, I don't expect him to get a single UFC win still. Give me, for the official pick, Cesar Almeida by unanimous decision. Up next on the card, we have a bantamweight pairing between Dan the Determined Argueta taking on Jean Matsumoto. Argueta is 30 years old. He is 9-1 overall with 2 knockouts, 4 submissions, and 3 decisions. He went 5-0 in LFA. He is the former LFA champ. He was a contestant on The Ultimate Fighter 29, and he's currently 1-1 with 2 no contests in the UFC. His best wins have been over Myron Santos and Nick Aguirre. He also should have a win over Ronnie Lawrence too, but that is one of his no contests. He had Ronnie Lawrence in a submission. The referee just immediately stopped the fight without checking if Ronnie Lawrence was unconscious. It was really strange. That is why he's coming off 2 no contests. The second one was a decision loss to Miles Johns, but Miles Johns failed the drug test, so that was a no contest as well. Argueta does have a good level. Couple of good level, high level teams behind him, as he trains at Jackson Wink, and he also spends time training at the UFC gym in Costa Mesa. Great, both pretty great teams. So yeah, he's going to be well prepared for this fight. He's going to be taking on the undefeated Matsumoto, who is 24 years old. He is 14-0 with 3 knockouts, 5 submissions, and 6 decisions. He went 2-0 in LFA and 1-0 on the Contender Series. Does have a couple of decent wins, but no names really worth mentioning. But he has beat some fighters who weren't bums, so he is an interesting prospect as he's making his UFC debut here. He's coming into this fight as a minus 205 favorite, with Argueta coming back as a plus 165 underdog. It's currently 1,143 Tapology votes on the fight. 81% of those are favoring Matsumoto, with 79% taking him to win by decision. Of the 19% taking Argueta, 70% are taking him to win by decision as well. I actually like the underdog in this fight. Argueta is the better wrestler. He is the more powerful fighter. He's also better defensively, and he has the better teams behind him. And he has more experience against higher level competition. So I'm liking the underdog here. Matsumoto is younger. He is still improving. He has a slight reach advantage in this fight. He does set a higher pace, so I get why he's the favorite. I could definitely see him winning this fight, but I expect Argueta to be able to use that veteran savvy, that experience that he has that I just mentioned, as well as his hunger for a real result. The guy's coming off back-to-back no contests, so he wants to put one in the books here. So, yeah, I like him to be able to use his wrestling, that power, just overall experience as well, to edge out the rounds and come out ahead on the scorecards. For the official pick, give me Dan Argueta by unanimous decision. In the next fight on the card, this is probably the worst fight on the card. It is Piera La Fiera versus Rodriguez versus Cynthia Calvillo. Rodriguez is 31 years old. She is 9-1 overall with 5 knockouts and 4 decisions. She's currently 2-1 in the UFC. She also went 1-0 in LFA and 1-0 on the Contender Series. Best wins of her career have come over Valeska Machado, Kay Hansen, and Sam Hughes, but she is coming off a loss to Jillian Robertson in her last outing. She will be taking on Cynthia Calvillo, who is 36 years old. She is 9-6-1 overall, 2 knockouts, 3 submissions, and 4 decisions. She is currently 6-6-1 in the UFC. She did go 1-0 in LFA. Best wins of her career have come in over Jillian Robertson, Montana De La Rosa, Pearl Gonzalez, Joanne Wood, Poliana Botelho, and Jessica Ai. But she hasn't won a fight since 2020. She beat Jillian Robertson and Montana De La Rosa before she was in the UFC, so all of her UFC victories are over fighters no longer on the roster. She has lost 5 fights in a row, and she did miss weight for this fight she's had multiple weight misses so not a good look for her. Rodriguez is coming in as a minus 155 favorite, with Calvillo coming back as a plus 130 underdog. It's currently 1,191 Tapology votes on the fight. 85% of those are favoring Rodriguez. Of those, 87% are taking her to win by decision. Of the 18% taking Calvillo, 83% are taking her to win by decision. Like I stated, this is probably one of the worst fights on the card. I expect it to be a pretty boring fight. I expect it to go to decision. And there's really no reason to think Calvillo can win a fight at this point. She hasn't done so in over 4 years. She doesn't have any wins in the UFC over fighters who are even still on the roster, except possibly Courtney Casey, who's 10-10 overall and 6-9 in the UFC. So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong if Courtney Casey's still there, but it's not a quality win anyway. Rodriguez isn't really a great fighter by any means, but she is 5 years younger. She's game enough to win the striking exchanges, and I think she can do enough to win the rounds. So, for the official pick, give me Piera Rodriguez by unanimous decision. This next fight is a short notice pairing, as Pedrinho Falco is stepping in on short notice to replace Alatang Haili, and he'll be taking on Victor Striker Hugo. Falco is 31 years old. He is 16-3 overall with 6 knockouts, 5 submissions, and 5 decisions. He does have a great team behind him at Nova União. He is making his UFC debut on short notice here, as I mentioned. He's 8-1 in Chuto, Brazil, and he went 1-0 in the Contender Series as well. Best wins of his career so far have come over Iliarde Santos, James Barnes, and Leonardo Morales. On the other side, Hugo is 31 years old. He is 24-4 overall with 8 knockouts, 9 submissions, and 7 decisions. He has a good team behind him as well at Astra Fight Team. He's got a very well-rounded skill set. He looks like a great prospect, just very well put together. Can win rounds or he can finish the fight no matter where it goes. So he's also beaten some good competition. None of them are really worth mentioning, but he's also not just beating bums. He's beaten some decent guys. So going into this fight, Hugo is a minus 135 favorite, with Falco coming back as a plus 115 underdog. It's currently 1,190 Tapology votes on the fight. 90% of those are favoring Hugo, with 53% taking him to win by submission. Of the 10% taking Falco, 44% are taking him to win by decision. Falco's a good fighter. I like him here. I think he's a good addition, but he's coming in here on such short notice that it's going to be a tall task. It is definitely a switch in styles for Hugo, so we have to keep that in mind too. You're going to have to give that side props for still taking the fight as well. But with how well-rounded Hugo is, I think he should be able to stay a step ahead no matter where the fight goes. And the longer the fight goes, I think the more it's going to start to favor Hugo as well. Falco had to make weight on such short notice that I think the longer the fight goes, the more we start to see him slow down. So for the official pick, give me Victor Hugo by unanimous decision. Up next on the card, we have Norma the Immortal Dumont taking on the returning Germaine the Iron Lady de Randamie. Dumont is 33 years old. She is 10-2 overall with 2 submissions and 8 decisions. She's currently 6-2 in the UFC. Best wins of her career so far have come over Tainara Lisboa, Felicia Spencer, Aspen Ladd, Carol Hossa, and Chelsea Chandler. On the other side, she's taking on de Randamie, who is 39 years old. She is 10-4 overall with 4 knockouts, 1 submission, and 5 decisions. De Randamie is currently 7-2 in the UFC. She also went 2-1 in Strikeforce. She is the former UFC Women's Featherweight Champion, and the best wins of her career so far have come over Larissa Pacheco, Holly Holm, Raquel Pennington, Aspen Ladd, Juliana Pena, and she hasn't fought in over 3.5 years, so she is making her return to the UFC at this point. Dumont is coming into this fight as a minus 200 favorite, with de Randamie coming back as a plus 165 underdog. It's currently 2,400 Tapology votes on the fight. 67% of those are favoring Dumont. 89% taking her to win by decision. Of the 33% taking de Randamie, 70% are taking her to win by decision. I do think this fight is going to decision. So another not a great fight here. Originally, I was favoring Dumont just at first glance. I think de Randamie's been out for so long that we really don't know how she's going to look coming back. So it wouldn't shock me if she loses. But breaking into their records here, Dumont's just not that impressive. I mean, she's beaten some good fighters, but her best wins have probably been over, Aspen Ladd, who had continuous struggles making weight and was cut from the UFC. Carol Hossa, who is kind of undersized for the division and still gave Dumont some serious trouble in the final round. And Felicia Spencer, who also just wasn't very good. On the other side, de Randamie has beaten Holly Holm, former champion, Larissa Pacheco, who's killing it in PFL right now, Raquel Pennington, who is the current UFC champion. She also beat Aspen Ladd as well, and she beat Juliana Pena, who's the former champion. So a lot more quality wins on that side, in my opinion. Dumont is 6 years younger. She has been active. If she can get the fight to the floor, I think she can really take over. I think she can have some success in the clinch as well, but I just think the power and striking of de Randamie is going to be a big X factor in this fight. If de Randamie's able to go in there and look at all like she used to, think she crushes Dumont really. Like if we put this fight together back when de Randamie was active, I think the pick is de Randamie all day. The layoff definitely is worrying, but assuming she looks even like she used to at all, she should be able to win this fight. So for the underdog upset and the official pick, I will take Germaine de Randamie by unanimous decision. Up next on the card, we jump up to the heavyweight division as Johnny Walker's brother, Walter the Clean Monster Walker, is making his UFC debut and will be taking on Lucas the Bull Bresky. Walker is 26 years old. He is 11-0 undefeated with 6 knockouts, 1 submission, and 4 decisions. He is the former MMA SR champion, former Titan FC champion as well. He's got a good team behind him at Gore MMA. He's a big heavyweight with some dangerous power in his shots, and his best win of his career so far was his last victory over former UFC fighter Alex Nicholson. He's going to be taking on Lucas Bresky, who is 31 years old. He is 8-4-1 overall currently with 5 knockouts, 2 submissions, and 1 decision. He's currently 0-3 in the UFC, and his win on the Contender Series was also overturned to a no contest. This guy has beaten some decent competition, none really worth mentioning, like I've said with other fighters, but he just, he wasn't beating bums, but nobody that was a good name. I still see some potential in Bresky, but his back is against the wall. This is do or die at this point. Walker is coming into this fight as a minus 350 favorite, and Bresky's coming back as a plus 280 underdog. It's currently 2,397 Tapology votes on the fight. 94% of those are favoring Walker. 84% of those are taking him to win by knockout. Of the 6% taking Bresky, 52% of those are taking him to win by decision. Like I said, I do think Bresky needs this win or he's going to be cut from the UFC. So he could be dangerous, cornered animal type situation here. His back's against the wall. But I just think he really looks outmatched here. Walker's bigger. He's got the reach advantage. He's stronger. He's got the better team behind him. He's also the more proven fighter the longer the fight goes. He's got 4 decision wins. Bresky only has 1. Bresky's not a big grappler either. I mean, he does have 2 submissions compared to Walker's 1, but I don't think he has a big advantage on the floor either. So I think bar Bresky kind of catching him with something early, I think Walter Walker runs him over. For the official pick, give me Walter Walker by knockout in the first round. Up next on the card, we have a welterweight pairing between Court the Crusher McGee taking on Alex the Great White Morono. McGee is 39 years old. He is 21-12 overall with 3 knockouts, 7 submissions, and 11 decisions. He is currently 10-11 in the UFC. He is the Ultimate Fighter 11 winner. Best wins of his career have been over Josh Neer, Robert Whittaker, Alex Garcia, and Claudio Silva. On the other side, Morono is 33 years old. He is 23-9 overall with 6 knockouts, 7 submissions, and 9 decisions, as well as 1 DQ win. He is currently 12-6 in the UFC. He's the former Legacy FC champ. Best wins of his career so far have been over Valdir Araujo, Cal Noak, James Muntazri, Josh Berkman, Zach Otto, Max Griffin, Donald Cerrone, Mickey Gall, Matthew Semmelsberger, and Tim Means. Morono is coming into this fight as a minus 300 favorite, with McGee coming back as a plus 240 underdog. It's currently 2,365 Tapology votes on the fight. 94% of those are favoring Morono, with 45% taking him to win by knockout. Of the 6% taking McGee, 59% have him winning by decision. I do think McGee needs this win more. He's coming off back-to-back knockout losses. He's 2-3 over his last 5. He hasn't won a fight in over 2 years, and he is past his prime. He also has that negative UFC record. If he loses this, he'll be 10-12 in the UFC. Think they might let him go. Retirement could be on the table as well. The problem with that is I do think Morono would be a tough fight for McGee even in his prime. But this decline version of him with durability questions, I think Morono's going to run him over. I think Morono makes it 3 straight knockout losses for him. Morono is dangerous. He's got some power. And, yeah, I think he lets it go, and I think he puts McGee away. I think he's going to know that McGee is not really a threat on the feet. He more just has to worry about the takedown. So I think he's going to let his hands fly, and I think he'll put him away early in the fight. So for the official pick, give me Alex Morono by knockout in the first round. The next fight has Fight of the Night written all over it, as Trevor Peek is taking on Charlie the Cannibal Campbell. In the red corner, we have Peek, who is 29 years old. He is 9-1 overall with 8 knockouts and 1 decision. He is currently 2-1 in the UFC and 1-0 on Contender Series. Best wins of his career so far have come over Kama Worthy, Malik Lewis, and Muhammad Yahya. He will be taking on Charlie Campbell, who is 28 years old. He is 8-2 overall with 6 knockouts and 2 decisions. He is currently 2-0 in Bellator, 1-0 in the UFC, but he went 0-1 on the Contender Series. While he's beaten some decent fighters, the best win of his career so far is probably that win over Alex Reyes. Coming into this fight, Campbell is a minus 225 favorite, while Peek is coming back at a plus 185 underdog. It's currently 2,354 Tapology votes on the fight. 57% are favoring Peek, while 74% of those taking him to win by knockout. Of the 43% taking Campbell, 62% of those are taking him to win by knockout. Like I said, this fight does have Fight of the Night potential written all over it. If not, a performance bonus is most likely, as it seems like everyone is expecting a knockout in this fight. I do think there's some recency bias on Campbell. I think that has swayed the odds makers. We did just see Campbell debut with a early knockout win, whereas Peek is 2-1 in the UFC. He won his first fight over a bum, ended up dropping a decision to Chepe Mariscal, and then rebounded with a decision win over Muhammad Yahya. Not too exciting decision win. So I think that big knockout has swayed the odds makers in favor of Campbell, but I'm not really sure that it's warranted. I do think Peek has definitely beaten the better competition. That knockout win was over Alex Reyes, who is 0-2 in the UFC. Both were first round knockout losses, and that first fight he had was in September of 2017, and then returned against Campbell in September of 2023. So a 6-year gap exactly. It was September 16th of 2017, and then he returned on September 16th of 23. So extremely long layoff. Also an unproven guy that had lost his only UFC fight, given it was to Mike Perry, but then he got knocked out by Charlie Campbell as well. We saw Campbell on the Contender Series end up getting knocked out by Chris Duncan. He had Duncan hurt early, but was unable to put him away, and then he ended up getting knocked out in the second round. I do think Campbell can kind of have some similar success here. I think he's going to be the more technical fighter. But Peak is super durable. This guy does kind of look like a kind of a no-brain dummy. I don't know if he is, but he kind of gives off that vibe that he's just one of those guys that's hard-headed. And we've seen him be durable. I think he can take a shot from Campbell to land one of his own, and I don't think Campbell's going to be able to take the shots from Peak. So I like Peak as an underdog here. For the official pick, give me Trevor Peak by knockout in the first round. Up next, we have an interesting lightweight pairing between Ignacio Lahalia Bahamondes taking on Christos the Spartan Giagos. Bahamondes is 26 years old. He is 14-5 overall with 9 knockouts, 1 submission, and 4 decisions. He's currently 3-2 in the UFC. He went 1-0 in LFA and 1-0 in the Contender Series as well. Best wins of his career so far have come over Roosevelt Roberts, Rong Zhu, and Trey Ogden. He's taking on Giagos, who is 34 years old. He is 20-11 overall with 8 knockouts, 4 submissions, and 8 decisions. He is currently 6-7 in the UFC. He also went 2-1 in ACB. Best wins of his career so far have been over Dakota Cochran, Alexander Pimentel, Mizuto Hirota, Damir Hadzovic, and Ricky Glenn. Bahamondes is coming into this fight as a minus 345 favorite, with Giagos coming back as a plus 270 underdog. It's currently 2,401 Tapology votes on the fight. 94% of those are favoring Bahamondes, with 41% of those taking him to win by knockout. Of the 6% taking Giagos, 48% of those are taking him to win by decision. Giagos has proved with his recent win over Ricky Glenn that he can never be counted out in any fight. He's always going to be dangerous. But he is a journeyman who's just really not very good. 6-7 in the UFC. Really hasn't beaten any great fighters. Bahamondes, we've seen him struggle a little bit, so I'm not entirely sold on him yet either. But he's also only 26. He is 8 years younger than Giagos. Still improving. He's got a decent team behind him. He's also never been knocked out. He looks pretty durable. So I don't think Giagos would be the guy to be the first one to stop him. I think we've seen Bahamondes against some decently heavy hitters before that has never been knocked out, and I don't think Giagos is much of a submission threat. So I do think this fight is going to go longer, and I think it's going to go to decision. And I do think that favors Bahamondes. I think Giagos will be dangerous early, but I think he's going to start to slow down, and Bahamondes is going to take over more and more as the fight goes. Bahamondes has the height and the reach advantage. And like I said, I think he's just going to take over. I think that third round is going to be the most dominant for him, and wouldn't be surprised if he gets a finish late. But my official pick will be Ignacio Bahamondes by unanimous decision. This next fight is a pretty great one here, and also has Fight of the Night written all over it, as Morgan the Last Pirate Charrier is taking on Chepe Machine Gun Mariscal. Charrier is 28 years old. He is 19-9-1 overall with 11 knockouts, 3 submissions, and 5 decisions. He's currently 1-0 in the UFC. He went 6-3 in Cage Warriors. His best wins of his career so far have been over Pedro Souza, Diego Silva, and Manolo Zucchini. And I don't think that we've seen the best out of him yet. I think he's still improving, and I see a lot of potential in him. On the other side is Mariscal, who is 31 years old. He is currently 15-6 overall with 7 knockouts, 3 submissions, and 5 decisions. He went 2-2 in LFA. He's currently 2-0 in the UFC, and the best wins of his career so far have been over Pat Sabatini, Yusuf Zalal, Trevor Peek, and Jack Jenkins. Charrier is coming in to this fight as the favorite, as a minus 155, and Mariscal is coming back as a plus 130 underdog. It's currently 2,328 Tapology votes on the fight. 54% of those are favoring Mariscal, with 69% of those taking him to win by decision. Of the 46% taking Charrier, 53% of those are taking him to win by decision. Both of these guys are dangerous, but they're also both really good fighters who are durable. So I kind of agree with the majority of the fans there that think this is going to be going to decision. And I'm actually surprised to see Mariscal as the betting underdog. The fans have taken him. He has won over a lot of fans. I actually thought that, him being 2-0 in the UFC, I thought that would sway the odds makers as well. But I do think he is a little bit overrated still. I've consistently doubted him, and he's consistently proved me wrong so far. But I am doubting him again here. Just haven't been that impressed with him. He beat Trevor Peek, who, he's durable and he hits hard, but if you look at the way he's throwing his punches, the guy technically is awful. And he ended up beating Jack Jenkins, and I will say he was probably winning that fight, but Jack Jenkins did get injured, so it's kind of a lot of unanswered questions in that fight as well. Charrier is younger. He has more potential overall, especially in the long run. I like his style to win this fight as well. I think Mariscal is tough, so he's going to be able to take a lot of shots from Charrier and still be there. So that is going to be a challenge that Charrier is going to have to overcome, especially later in the fight. If he tees off on him early and Mariscal is still there, it's going to be rough going late because he's going to be tired and Mariscal is going to keep fighting. But I don't know. I see a lot of potential in Charrier. I think he is someone to really watch in this division. So I am going to pick him here. For my official pick, give me Morgan Charrier by unanimous decision. In the co-main event of the evening, we have Alexander the Great Ape Hernandez taking on Damon the Leech Jackson. Hernandez is 31 years old. He is 14-7 overall with 6 knockouts, 2 submissions, and 6 decisions. He's currently 6-6 in the UFC. He went 1-0 in LFA. Best wins of his career so far have been over Beneil Dariush, Olivier Aubin-Mercier, Francisco Trinaldo, and Jim Miller. On the other side, Jackson is 35 years old. He is 22-6-1 overall with 4 knockouts, 15 submissions, and 3 decisions. He is currently 5-4-1 in the UFC. He also went 7-1 in LFA, where he was the champion. He went 2-0 in Bellator as well, and 0-1 in PFL. Best wins of his career so far have been over Leonard Garcia, Nate Jennerman, Mirsad Bektik, Charles Rosa, Dan Argueta, and Pat Sabatini. Hernandez is coming into this fight as a minus 200 favorite, while Jackson's coming back as a plus 165 underdog. It's currently 2,439 Tapology votes on the fight. 73% of those are favoring Hernandez, with 60% taking him to win by knockout. Of the 27% taking Jackson, 43% are taking him to win by decision. Hernandez did miss weight for this fight. I'm recording this pretty late on Friday, so I was able to see that he missed weight. I'm not too happy about that. He's missed weight at featherweight before. He keeps fluctuating back and forth between lightweight or featherweight. I think that's also contributed to his 6-6 UFC record. I think if he would settle down and just kind of commit himself to one division or the other, he would have had more success. Because of that weight miss, we do have to question how his cardio is going to be in this fight. I think the longer the fight goes, the more it could start to favor Jackson. Hernandez has always had cardio issues anyway. But Jackson's 35 years old. He's coming off a pair of losses, one of which was a knockout. He's been knocked out multiple times in his career. So there is a worry for that, especially because Hernandez has big power in his shots, especially early in the fight. Just took a look at it as well. The stat, 4 of 6 of Jackson's losses are knockout losses. So early going of this fight is going to be really interesting. I think either Hernandez knocks him out early, or does some big damage and wins the early rounds. And then he's going to have to try and survive late because he'll be tired and Jackson will start to come back. Wouldn't be shocked if Jackson pulls off like a second or third round submission in this fight, but I just don't trust his chin. Defensive wrestling of Hernandez is decent as well, so I think even if he doesn't get that stoppage early, he probably can hold on to the final bell. I mean, if you look at some of the people that Hernandez has beaten, knocked out Beneil Dariush, we kind of call that one a fluke, but still happened. Olivier Aubin Mercier, who absolutely killed it in PFL, was their champion for how long, beat him. Beat Francisco Trinaldo, who's no joke. That guy was, he hung around for a long time. He was a veteran, always at the top of the division. And Jim Miller, veteran Jim Miller, who's a fan favorite that everyone loves, who's also similar to Trinaldo in the fact that he's a veteran. He's still been around. He's still at the top of the division, still competing at a high level. Hernandez beat him as well. So, when he's on, he is a really good fighter. Consistency is something he struggled with. I don't like that weight miss. It does make me question this pick more than I need to, but I also don't trust that chin of Jackson, especially with him being 35, getting older. I do think that he's going to have to absorb some shots early, and I just don't think he'll be able to hold up to him. So for the official pick, give me Alexander Hernandez by knockout in the first round. It's time for the main event of the evening here as Brendan All-In Allen is taking on Chris, the Action Man Curtis. Allen is 28 years old. He is 23-5 overall with 5 knockouts, 14 submissions, and 4 decisions. He's currently 11-2 in the UFC. He went 5-2 in LFA, 1-0 on Contender Series. He's got a great team behind him at Killcliff FC. He was the former LFA champion. Best wins of his career so far have been over Kevin Holland, Tom Breeze, Jacob Malkoun, Christoph Jotko, Andre Muniz, Bruno Silva, and Paul Craig. On the other side, Curtis is 36 years old. He is 31-10 overall, 15 knockouts, 3 submissions, and 13 decisions. He is currently 5-2 in the UFC. He went 1-3 in PFL and 1-0 on the Contender Series. He also has a great team behind him at Extreme Couture. And the best wins of his career so far have been over Nashawn Burrell, Andre Fialho, Phil Hawes, Brendan Allen, Rodolfo Vieira, Joaquin Buckley, and Marc-Andre Barrio. Yes, I did just mention that Curtis has beaten Brendan Allen. We're going to get into that in a minute. Betting odds on this fight, Allen is a minus 200 favorite, while Curtis is coming back as a plus 165 underdog. It's currently 2,497 Tapology votes on the fight. 78% of those are favoring Allen, with 59% taking him to win by submission. Of the 22% taking Curtis, 74% are taking him to win by knockout. This is a rematch. Curtis was actually the last fighter to beat Allen as he knocked him out in the second round of their first meeting. Since then, Allen has won 6 straight fights and moved into title contention, whereas Curtis has gone 3-2 since. I really only see Curtis having that puncher's chance in this fight, but clearly he's good at finding it. He found it in the first fight. That was when Curtis was winning. Around that time, he was winning by a lot of knockouts. He knows how to put himself into those positions to land the shots he needs to end the fight. He is very good about that, but I think Allen's still only 28. Curtis is 36. I think Allen should have learned a lesson from that fight. I expect him to grapple more in this fight and really just start to wear Curtis out. I don't think he's going to put himself in those positions to even to take those shots. So I do like Allen to avenge that loss, and I think he's going to wear out and probably submit Chris Curtis. I think that's what we're looking at here. I think the fan voting is pretty accurate there. Either Allen's going to win by submission or Curtis is going to win by knockout. And I'm sticking with the favorite on this one. For the official pick, give me Brendan Allen by submission in the third round. Thank you so much for listening. I have been your host, Jack Moon, and this has been the MMA Oracles Podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, and follow. You can find me pretty much everywhere at the MMA Oracles. I do apologize. This one came out super late into the week. Had some personal issues going on, but next fight card after this is going to be UFC 300, so I definitely will be trying to get that one out a little bit sooner. Can't wait for that. This card also just wasn't that great. But let's get into some of my locks for the card. As always, I do have Alex Morono. I just think Court McGee is over the hill. I don't see him winning many more fights in the UFC. I think, honestly, this could be his last one, especially when Morono knocks him out in the first round. Also have Walter Walker coming in here. His fight against Alex Nicholson in his last outing, I think, really proved a point that he is at this level ready to be in the UFC. He went later into that fight, still scored the knockout. Alex Nicholson isn't that great, but he's definitely a dangerous guy. So I really like that win, and coming in against a guy like Lucas Bresky, who's 0-3 in the UFC, his only, real great win was on the Contender Series, and that was overturned to a no contest for a failed drug test. So, the guy hasn't shown that he can do anything. So I think Walker will probably get him out of there early as well. And then Ignacio Bahamondes, I think he's fighting a kind of a journeyman bum. He's a young prospect. It's a fight he kind of has to win, or we're going to write him off entirely. And Christos Giagos basically has a puncher's chance, but Ignacio Bahamondes is way younger, way more durable, so I don't see that coming through for him. That will also be my parlay. Throw those three guys together for a plus 134 odds. My underdogs for this card, Cesar Almeida. Seriously don't understand how he's even an underdog. I see all other analysts picking him as well. Dylan Budka sucks. Almeida's not much better, so it wouldn't shock me if he loses, but I don't understand how Almeida's even an underdog in that fight. Dan Argueta, really like him there. I think people are kind of overlooking him at this point. John Matsumoto has that 14-0 record that I think is kind of throwing people off of Dan Argueta, but I think Dan Argueta has definitely faced the better competition and can pull off that upset. Trevor Peak, I think a lot of people have started to come around to this one as well. I see the Tapology fan vote. I see some other people picking him as well. I do like him as the underdog there. I just don't think Charlie Campbell has the chin to win that fight. And then Jermaine Durandamy. I wasn't actually picking that one originally. I was going Norma Dumont, but I don't know. The more I looked at it, I saw more people picking Jermaine Durandamy. I don't think that swayed me entirely. I think what really did it was when I looked at their records, who they've beaten. Norma Dumont just isn't impressive. She's not where she should be. She just doesn't do anything that great. That last fight that she had against one of her last fights against Carol Hossa was able to kind of hurt her in the third round, had her in all sorts of trouble. Wasn't able to put her away, but if Carol Hossa can have you in trouble, Tremaine Durandamy certainly can. So I like her as the underdog there as well. Those are my picks. Like I said, UFC 300 is coming up soon. So I will see you guys back for that next one. Thank you so much. Signing out. See you on the next card.